So now that we've looked at the synthesizers and percussion, let's jump straight into the organics section. I call that organics. It kind of refers to organic instruments like pianos, guitars, all the stuff like that. And so yeah, let's start with the pianos. What I actually have here is a bunch of pianos available at the same time, depending on what kind of tone I'm aiming for. And this is the third instance of Piano Ensemble Pro, as you can see here. Just let me open that up. We have the organics, starting with piano, and in there, as I've said, a bunch of different pianos for the sake of having different sounds available at the same time without the need to reload anything. So yeah, starting off with a cinematic grand. And yeah, just for different sound colors and native instruments, the giant. The Galaxy Vintage D from Best Service. Pretty cool sounds, and 8 years, 1928 grand. A little bit soft in comparison to the others, so let's just raise the volume a little bit on that one. And yeah, then we go on with electric pianos, Scarby Mark 1 from Native Instruments. The A200. And then I have a bunch of tuned percussion instruments, sound irons, bumlong. These are great for all that kind of dramedy stuff. Sound irons, circle bells. Some sample logic stuff. Could belong pretty much straight to the synth section, but anyways, a little bit more of an artificial marimba sound. Then using the 8-dio alien drums, just more or less a hang drum, but chromatically tuned. Pretty good stuff. Then we have using hypersonic here, Steinberg's own workstation, sound workstation, Rumpler. Just because I really like these sounds. Really cool vibe sound. Till recently, I had the vibes from a vibraphone from East West Symphonic Orchestra in a pretty dry setting. Just recently switched that because I just like that one more, and right now I don't have play anymore in my template. Marimba sound also from Hypersonic. And actually these are not assigned, so can get rid of these. One thing to mention for the piano, what I often do is when it gets to more atmospheric stuff, if you have a look at the audio channel, the return channel from Vienna Instruments, where all the 4 pianos that I have loaded in the template right now get back to the mixer. I have basic reverb for the ambience. You can just listen if I take that off. I take that off. That was the wrong channel. Actually, I'm wondering a little bit why there's still so much reverb going on. I think this is the setting of, let me check, this is the setting of the cinematic rand. Yep, exactly. This is because the reverb is still on here. That's strange. Why is there still... okay. So when we get back to the mixer page and to the pianos, initially what I wanted to say is that I have a basic ambience on top. You can hear that here. And oftentimes when I happen to do underscoring and stuff like that, I often use that Valhalla reverb with a kind of 5 seconds reverb. Which is great, and you can even raise the reverb time a little bit and then switch to the giant, for example. And the same applies not only to the reverb, but I also have a delay channel on top, the Waves H delay. Right now we have a pretty high tempo, so I'm going back to 80, for example. So that I can easily grab totally different sounds depending on what kind of cue I'm working on. So completely dry up to lots of reverb and lots of delay depending on what I need for the track that I'm on. And yeah, so far for the keyed instruments, going on with Orchestra. As I've said, it's not dedicated as as an orchestral template or a trailer music template or anything like that. But more often than not, I'm going to use strings or brass or whatever these kind of instruments on top to give them, for example, filmic sound or film score like sound. Without going too much into detail, so I'm not going to use really detailed libraries like Lass or Berlin strings or stuff like that to write for string orchestra, but rather use Symphobia or Adagietto for ensemble patches and to quickly lay down ideas and rather sketch down things than really write for a string section. So when I need to use a string bed or I rather use these Symphobia patches. Or action strings. And obviously there's a little bit, tempo's a bit too slow to make them sound good. And if I need to change the kind of loops or kind of style phrase that I want to have in that specific cue, I'm just going in here and change that. And just need to keep in mind that I save the corresponding loop set that I use to name that in the track, so that when I load the template at a later point in time, I can easily switch back to what I had there. Next one is you always need some kind of solo violin or solo string instrument, so I'm using cinematic strings here for the violin 1, or as well as the cinematic strings cellos. Happens that I need to use solo violin, and unless I have somebody actually playing the part, using the Friedlander violin here from Embertone. And they offer various articulation sets depending on how deep you want to control the library. I, for myself, went just with a mode wheel version to not really go too deep into editing and tweaking a solo violin library or a solo violin sound. If I want to sketch something on top, that's enough realism for me to sketch things down. If it needs to get more in detail, I rather tend to have somebody recording the violin parts than actually faking them. Going on, Symphobia Pizzicato. And just for the sake of having an alternative to the Symphobia sounds, also have loaded the Adagietto sustains from ADO, as well as these are whole ensembles like Symphobia, but they don't sound that huge. So sometimes when you want a little bit less than the big Symphobia sound, these work pretty great. And again, these I have not loaded on my master PC, but rather on my slave PC. Um, so the amount of RAM needed is, yeah, not equally spread. I mean, the major part of the sample load is still on my master, but I found that it is actually pretty helpful to put sample stuff away to the slave machine and having it set up like that so that my machine doesn't get to its knees. Also using the dynamic bowings. Really beautiful, lush sounds. Tremolos as well. By the way, I have not set up tremolos for Symphobia, for example, but with a bunch of the latest updates, the Symphobia libraries are all key switchable. So, for example, I have the string longs, and I set it up to use the sustains vibrato. But I can easily key switch to, for example, a tremolo patch when I need it. So no problem with that. But still, I have the tremolos here from Adagietto as well. So that works out pretty great. Also loaded, just to have a different color than the cinematic strings, the Adagietto violin legatos. The violas. Cellos. I mean, I also have the Adagio package, but I'm totally fine with having these as sound option available. It's just too much to get into detail with string sounds or anything like that for production music tracks that I want to create fast, and I'm totally fine with that selection. And when I need to dig deeper, then I can still always load up different libraries to fine tune a string sound when I want to achieve a certain sound that I can't achieve with the ensemble patches. But I haven't encountered that moment yet that I can do for the stuff that I'm talking about, like production music or hybrid music, for example, tension stuff. I don't need to go too much into detail into string writing with specific parts for every instrument. I'm pretty fine with the sounds that I have available in the template. Just to round that up, the Sardinos from Adagietto as well. Also a beautiful sound. And last but not least, the Adagietto pizzicatos. Little bit soft too. Yeah, that works better. Going on with brass, just some Symphobia brass shorts, as well as the longs. And I happen to find that it's not enough for me when I want to fine tune that a bit. So have been loading some of the Cinebrass instruments on my slave PC. So here we have Cinebrass running with basically the horns as you find them in the orchestra. with the brass, not with the horns only. So horn section, trumpet section. Trombones. Cimbasso. And the monster brass patch from Cinebass Pro. Can't get any bigger. Some ensemble effects, always great for tension stuff when you have kind of a loop going and some rising to a climax moment, and you just end the big one with a low boom hit and these ensemble effects on top. Always great to do. Again, Symphobia woodwinds, ensemble woodwinds. And the same for longs. And also for the sake of having some diversity available, Adio's Clare series, at least the flute, oboe, clarinet and bassoon, both in legato variation. Sorry for any dropouts, that is due to the recording at the same time. So the legato articulation, as well as different articulation like charts, sustains. And the same applies for all the other instruments from that series. Clarinet. And last but not least, bassoon. And finally I have some sonic kinetic orchestral effects from Tutti, which is also great for tension cues. Some as well as some of the well-known Symphobia orchestra effects. And the much overused trailer risers. What happens is that oftentimes when I want some more intimacy in a tune, or for example when I'm working on some kind of dramedy stuff, all these orchestral instruments are way too wet, too much reverb on them. And they had that stage sound. And before actually going into the mixer and changing things here, what I did here is to just add another folder with dry versions where I have Symphobia loaded with, just let me open that up here, where I have Symphobia loaded as with a close mic setting and way less reverb on the group channel. So different variations of the spiccatos. If we just compare the dry spiccatos to the, where do example, here, the spiccatos from Symphonia 2, in comparison to the dry version. Way more direct. So depending on the cue I'm working on, I can easily switch between the wet and the dry versions and have no need to change anything in the setup, change reverb on the orchestral instruments, for example. Mostly that applies to strings from my experience, so I rarely put brass into a dry setting or something like that. Mostly it's pizzicato or spiccatos or even the sustained sounds that need to be a little drier than the wet versions. It's just not as big as so that works out for a bunch of TV cues where you rather want to have that dry sound, especially with pizzicato when you think of all that Desperate Housewife stuff and dramedy. In comparison to the Symphonia wet pizzicatos. So the dry version is very much more upfront. Recently added the Symphonia Animator library. Still need to figure my way around it. Lots of cool, great sounds for that comedic writing. But it also works great underneath the dramedy cue with some grooves on top with tambourine or shakers, and just doing hit points with these. Great stuff in there. And also for these, I have pretty much loaded the dry settings. So these come with various mic controls, mic position controls, dry, I think out trigger in room or something like that, or stage in room. And if you take, for example, these cartoon percussion effects, but for that template I'm sticking more to the close sound. Again, some unused MIDI cues. Yeah, that's for the keys and orchestra. So let's hop over to guitars and stuff like that. So next in line, what we're gonna deal with is the guitars and everything, stringed instrument, bass. I mixed that a lot so that I'm using sample libraries as well as live recordings, using Virtu's Acoustics, which is great library for acoustic guitars. The library comes with 6 different guitar types: 12-string, steel string, nylon guitar, ukulele, mandolin, and it just sounds great. That's the first thing. When you need fast arpeggios or something like that, lay down fast these lines. There's the nylon guitar as well. And what's also cool is with this library, when you actually play chords, like, let me put that down here that you can actually see the keyboard. You have the single notes. Once you grab a fifth, as soon as you grab two notes at the same time, you have strumming keys in the upper area here. You can see them. As you can see above here. And once you're grabbing a chord with 3 notes, the software actually translates to how a guitarist will play it. So just let me play a straight D minor here. And obviously you can hear more than 3 notes that I'm actually playing, and this is because the software translates that into an actual guitar chord. And with the strumming keys, and 1 octave above, besides the strumming keys, you also have strum noises and things like that. So you can easily based on the chord you've played before, and this applies to all 6 guitars that they have on board. So also for the Western guitar. Also legato playing possible with the single notes. Multi-wave controls, vibrato. The mandolin sounds gorgeous. If you layer that on top of an acoustic guitar with some delay effects on top, sounds just great. Then I've actually got in there the ADO mandolin strummer. Which comes with a variety of different strumming styles. And also a bunch of different chords. So that you can put together accompaniment for the cue you're working on pretty soon. Same with the acoustic strummer. Also with different strumming types. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, besides these acoustic samples, what I actually can do is, right now I'm speaking into the microphone, but I have the chain set up so that I just grab my acoustic guitar and can also play into acoustic guitar, although I have to admit that I rarely record acoustic guitar, because mostly when you have these samples underneath the groove or something like that, it's really hard to tell the difference whether it's a real guitar or not, unless you want to feature a solo, expressive solo guitar or anything like that. I mean, if that's the case, I get a guitarist on board anyway, but if you just need some ukulele strumming underneath a happy Hawaiian tune, mostly it's fine to just go back to the samples. Same pretty much applies to electric guitar. I have some sets or some sounds that I go back to every now and then for cues, like the Orange Tree samples, electric guitar. There's the certain specific preset sound that I really love, which is kind of harmonics. Which is just great. This is from Heaviosity's Evolve. Has some great changes in the sound with mod wheel. Then I have some basic electric rhythms. This is from 9-volt audio, I think. May not sound too good on its own, but sometimes with a drum track on top and just some basic bass notes and a little bit riffing underneath, or eighth shredding of the guitar, it can work. And I can change between single notes, power chords, and 16ths. Scarby funk guitarist from Native Instruments. This one requires a little bit more digging into the details, as it offers so much tweakability regarding chord shapes and rhythms and stuff like that, that you can actually edit the hell out of it and just save it as a preset, and then I just rename the preset here when I happen to use the funk guitarist. Dream Audio Tools Indie Fingers is also great for adding flavor on top of chords. Just repeated phrases. There's tons of other sounds in this library, but I sticked to the most basic ones and rather build something around that, or put these on top of a line. And they have some cool effects on mod wheel as well. You can kind of chop the notes. It doesn't work with that, but with that one. What the hell is going on here? I think I grabbed the wrong patch. Just let me have a look. It's channel 14. I'm missing one channel here. There we are. Okay, Mr. MIDI channel. That's a pretty cool effect and can work really well on top of other guitar tracks. Really like that. Just let me rename that. So, Then I have set up a special instance of stylus, which again, I mentioned that before, that huge library from 9-volt audio. There is a bunch of guitar stuff in there as well. Tons of riffs and stuff like that. And again, I set it up to play the groove menu instead of single notes. So depending on where I want to go, that can come in handy as well. I did 2 of them. Mostly these guitar libraries have a basic rhythm structure with distorted guitars and the same riffs with processed or affected guitars like that. And I like to have the choice to use both. And as well, another instance that is less iconic in terms of riffs, but rather straightforward, 8th or 4th quarter notes, or and there I can choose a bunch of different styles as well. So when needed, I can go to there. There's the channel that I was missing. So I'll put that up. The cool thing with the indie finger stuff is that you can actually, so it's not fixed with the notes, but you can, instead of having the same notes at the same time, so you get real kind of an arpeggiated effect or an alternating effect between different strings on a guitar. Besides that, what I also do is I always have the chain set up for the electric guitars to add something on top. So I have my guitar here, and 2 channels for a clean track and an overdrive track. So you may hear the original sound of the strings as well through the mic. What's really cool is when you combine these 2 things, like having, for example, just playing an B and an E to have a kind of a 4th, and then laying live guitar on top just with some additional notes and giving the whole thing a little bit of flavor. If I could play correctly, sorry. So as you hear, the sampled guitar stays the same all the time, but just through throwing in some additional notes, it just becomes way more human than just using samples alone. So just for example, and same applies to the overdrive sound. When I want to just turning the volume a bit down, and once more, same example but with a little bit more drive. And you can just add on. So really handy to have audio channels set up, pre-set up to record on top of samples. And I'm not the giftedest whatever guitar player out there, so I just have some basic knowledge of grabbing some chords and doing some kind of riffing with some palm muting and stuff like that. So definitely not a virtuose guitar player, but it really helps to make sample-based material more human when I put something humanly played on top. This also applies to, I mean, I have a bunch of instruments here, like an ukulele that I can add on top, and I think ukulele is even better than guitar for me because it's just a little bit easier. So using different instruments and sources of live material, I have some flutes lying around here. What else? Some percussion stuff, tambourine, some shakers and stuff like that. So not necessarily need to take samples all the way. Just grab the egg and do some kind of that stuff and try to get some human note into these tracks. Next in line would be in that case I use Orange Tree Samples cherry bass. Or again, Dream Audio Tools repetitive bass. These are pretty cool when it comes to eighth notes, because these are actual recordings of a bass player playing eighth notes, which always sounds better than having a sample library playing eighth notes. I mean, it has a repeat key, so you can emulate that up and down. But when you compare that to an actual recording, besides the slightly different sound of the bass itself, it just sounds more natural. And last but not least in line, we have a Trillion. And I can always, of course, always go for a different bass sound when I want to change things there. But so far I have only loaded an acoustic bass sound. Yeah, that's pretty much regarding guitars, and that stuff down here is more or less just to try some things out. I just recently added these, like having special libraries like Ehlert, Terry Lonte's Forest Kingdom or Ethno World, where you have tons of sounds to create just sound beds and stuff like that. These are just added in, and I mean, obviously, such a template is growing and growing over time because you tend to use more and more sounds. But overall, that's pretty much regarding the instruments that I'm using here. So in the next step, we're just gonna take a look at the approach of mixing the whole thing and how you can speed up the workflow with mixing and stemming when you need to deliver stems. So let's have a look at the mixer now. So when it comes to mixing, I've already mentioned that a few times, that I try to get these kind of cues done as soon as possible and don't want to lose too much time in whatever task is needed to get the cue done. The same applies for me to mixing, that I kind of think of the way mix as little as possible and try to have as much setup as possible to really just write, export, and done. So one thing that's first to mention is that I do a lot of balancing of the instruments, not even in the mixer window. As you can see, most of these faders are pretty much at their default position, besides some exceptions here with Omnisphere, which is insanely loud from the patches themselves. But pretty much all the faders are at default position, and there's a special reason for it, because I tend to balance the template more through the initial volumes of or MIDI volumes of the channels. So for example, as you can see, all of these tracks are set up with CC7 at a certain level, and this has developed over time. This is the way I try to balance the template through MIDI messages with CC7 for the volume. So let me show that here. For example, in the strings, where we are here, Symphobia strings, you get CC7, which is the volume level of the instrument, of the contact instrument, where I have the Symphobia strings long there. So what I set up is the main volume, and if I change that here, it transfers to that knob here. So changing CC7 for that particular instrument changes the overall volume. Then the next thing I have at hand is CC11 expression, which controls the also the volume, but within the given volume of CC7. That's hard to explain. There's kind of two different volume parameters that act independently from another. Some libraries also have kind of vibrato or different articulations applied on CC11. For the most part, I tend to set up a basic volume with CC7 for all the instruments, and then when I need to change instrument volumes within the track, I do that with CC11. So I don't need to touch the faders of the instruments within Contact. And one more thing is when a library comes with mod wheel control, so that, for example, like the Symphobia strings, when I put the mod wheel all the way down, they're barely audible, and when I put the mod wheel all the way up, there's a lot of volume in there. Actually, for my taste, even too much. So what I'm gonna do here is lower the CC7 a bit, because I try to have the channels at around, if we have a look at the mixer again, there we are, try to have the channels around -10 dB to have enough headroom in the end, and not turn red on the master. And then I have CC11 or expression as a knob on my keyboard controller as well. So when I want that, for example, that softer part that I have with the low mod wheel setting, I can still control the volume within the low level with CC11 up to 0 and no more audible. So great for fade-ins and stuff like that, because mod wheel mostly doesn't mute the sound. You always have something left, and then therefore CC11 to get rid of that as well. So yeah, balancing the mix already with MIDI messages so that I have a certain volume between the instruments without even touching the channel faders. And then when a track is done, or let's look at the technical side. So all the instruments that are coming back from the Ensemble Pro, we can see here. So we have the synth, the loops, battery, percussion ensembles, the epic percussions, mid, high, low percussion, easy drummer, the slate drums, which we were talking about before. And all these are grouped together on a subgroup percussion. So everything that I play there lands in this channel. Same applies for piano. Piano is a little bit special because they got their own group channel in the end. All the guitars, electric guitars, acoustic guitars, go to the guitar group. The bass obviously has its own group. Brass, woodwind, strings, orchestral effects, all... Oh, just missed that one. All go to the orchestra stem or subgroup. Omnisphere again goes to the synth section, and so on and so forth. So in the end, I have all the individual channels grouped into specific groups, subgroups, and this helps a lot when I'm going to export a track that is needed with stems. So not only the stereo file, but the individual files like percussion, bass, piano, other instrument, and stuff like that. So with a single mouse click or key click, I can choose channel export for different channels and can export all the stems at once. One thing that helps tremendously in doing so is not using any send effects, because imagine you have a reverb set up as a send effect and you send the piano there, you send the strings there, you send the acoustic guitar there. Then all the instruments go into the reverb and are fed back into the master so you can hear it properly. But when you actually export these groups, either you have the reverb channel as an additional stem, but then you're pretty limited to having all sound sources within the reverb, but you can actually export the piano with reverb, the guitars with reverb in one go. Then you would have to export every single track on its own with a reverb applied. So what I'm actually doing is when I use reverb or delay or whatever, I configure them as insert effects, so they apply only to the channel itself. And through the wet-dry mix, I can pretty much have the same setting as if I'm using send effects. So that way I get rid of any send effect channels and have everything within the group, and so the reverb for the pianos is on the piano track, the reverb for the guitars is on the guitar track, etc. So everything comes together nicely, and I can export the stems with one go and don't have to think about anything more. The only difference is that the group channels don't have the master in really careful with the word. It doesn't have to do anything with mastering. It's just basically a limiter to push the volume a little bit. They don't have that effect applied, but initially these are subgroups, and the volume difference is around 3 to 4 dB between the master and the individual tracks. So I can live with that, and so far I haven't had any complaints. What I'm using on the individual channels, as you can see, there's very little in terms of EQ going on. I have a little bit compression using the Slate Virtual Mix Rack. A little bit compression going on the percussion channels to be safe with some of the peaks. We were talking about that before, the different reverb settings for piano, A-piano, that percussion stuff. Special hall or reverb for the acoustic guitars. Electric guitars has pretty much nothing in there. It's either made through the contact interface of the sample instruments or through the amp simulator that I'm using when live recording guitars. So only thing that I may do, I'm just trying out currently this Scuffum amp. So far I'm pretty happy with the sound, so I guess I'm going to buy the full version. And these will get some treatment afterwards with a little bit EQ, taking out the low end, and even some slight compression pre-set up for the sound that I'm using. So then these are good to go into the mix directly as well. And finally, on the group channels, pretty much all there is the Slate Digital Virtual Channel to bring some warmth into the sound. Some people may argue whether it really helps or not. For my ears, it helps, and that's why I'm putting them in there. And no more EQ. I strongly believe that that it's not a question of tweaking or doing sounds, running them through EQ, etc. I think it's more a question of arrangements and how you arrange sounds. And I rather try to find sounds that match each other right from the start, instead of trying to put them into the mix afterwards through EQing and tweaking a lot of the technical side. So when I'm happy with the sounds as they are in the arrangement, then there's pretty much no need to tweak them afterwards. They just work with each other. And when you have that array of sounds available, you pretty much always find a way to transport the melodies or the sounds, or what you hear in your head, without the necessity to actually tweak them afterwards. We can have a look at that in a moment when we look at some real life examples. And yeah, in the end, just a virtual mix bus plus the L3 limiter for some volume on top, and that's pretty much all there is to it. So sorry to disappoint you. No, not really mixing secrets or anything like that, because I don't do very much mixing on these kind of cues. So having said that, the best way to put such a template to test is to actually see how it works in a live situation. So let's just have a look at some possible tracks or possible usages.